In 1991, a man called Micheal Joyner wrote an article explaining what he thought to be the physiological speed limit in the marathon. And the number that Joyner came to was 1 hour, 57 minutes and 58 seconds. And it got me thinking, how far are we away from this? And will it be technology like these that get us there? Short answer, we're 2 minutes and 37 seconds away. Thanks for watching. The long answer, well, it's a little bit complicated. Here is a timeline of the marathon world records from 1908 until today. And with each improvement in training practices, courses, and road surfaces, we've seen that the world record has had a steady decline over time. Another guy called Simon Angus plotted these world records onto this cool looking graph and used predictive models to plot out when it would be statistically likely that we'd have athletes breaking the 2-hour barrier and moving beyond. And he surmised that it would happen around 2032. Well, a few years later, Eliud Kipchoge ripped that apart when he ran a 1:59.40 in a non-legal race, keep in mind. But this absolutely destroyed any doubts that this theoretical speed limit was never going to be possible. Now, if we look back in time, we can see two periods where the marathon world record has accelerated rapidly. The first being the introduction of African athletes into international running in the 1950s and 60s. And with that came the use of altitude training and using very specific marathon training plans. And the second time where we saw a huge acceleration in the marathon world records was in 2017 and the introduction of the carbon fiber running shoe. But here's what's crazy. Since these shoes were released in 2017, pretty much every world record on the road has been completely destroyed. The most insane of which was Teagues de Sefer last year when she won a women's world record of 2:11.53, which is 2 minutes faster than the previous world record. Calm down, Sefer, please. And the shoe that she ran this world record in was the Adidas Adios Evo 1, a shoe designed specifically to only be used in one marathon. And the only thing that comes to my mind when I think about a shoe that's designed to only be used once is mechanical doping. Now, there are two sides to this story, and later in the video, I'll reveal what the data suggests about how fast we can actually go. And the one athlete that I think could get us very close to Joyner's speed limit this year in 2024. But first, I want to show you why this rise in mechanical doping is going to continue making the sport faster, but it may ruin the sport of running in the short term. And to explain why I think this, we're going to have to talk a little bit about swimming. Yeah, you heard that right, swimming. Bear with me. Gather around, gather around. This is a story about how swimming got completely broken. After the 2004 Olympics, a company called Laser developed a full bodysuit for swimmers to try and reduce drag in the water and increase buoyancy. And as a result of these tech suits, basically every single world record was destroyed over the next 5 years. That's about 98 world records. And when I mean that these broke swimming, I mean it. The world's best swimmer and also human canoe, Michael Phelps, threatened to leave the sport. They were later banned in 2009 and banished to the Shadowlands to never return again. And swimming lived happily ever after. The end. So here's a list of records that still stand today, 15 years later. Still quite a significant amount left. And from what I've read, they're probably the most difficult world records to beat in any sport after the ban of the supersuits. All right, enough of this swimming stuff. We're land-based athletes on this channel. The question that I have is this where running is heading? And is this the kind of mechanical advantage that runners are actually gonna need to achieve this speed limit? Well, the answer is yes. I think for road running, we've gone beyond the point of no return. And as you saw earlier, the records have been completely destroyed in the supershoot era. And I'll be honest, it's unknown whether there's gonna be more stringent regulations in the future that may cause the same issues as the supersuit. But irrespective of the tools used by runners, do we actually have any capable of running at this theoretical speed limit today? And is the group large enough to make this 1 in 100 possibility actually a reality? Comment below who you think is capable of running sub 2 or at this theoretical speed limit. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'll reveal who I think later in the video, so stick around. In 2010, Joyner followed up his original article from 1991 to discuss the physiology, genetics, and likely performance profile of an athlete who'd be able to run any kind of sub 2-hour marathon. And keep in mind that in 2010, when he wrote that article, the marathon world record was 2:03.59 and super shoes were not even invented yet. But here is his updated theoretical recipe list of an athlete that he thinks would be capable of such a feat. Number one, they have to have very specific dimensions. They will need to be 61 kilos or less in body weight and likely won't be any taller than 176 centimeters. And they also need to have very specific physiological markers because they'll need to have a VO2 max of at least 85, which is truly insane. And to put this in context, if you were to go to a lab and do a VO2 max test and get 85, you would be in the top 20 athletes who have ever lived and had their VO2 max recorded. So pretty slim pickings at the moment. Joyner said that these athletes would have to sustain 85 to 90% of their VO2 max for at least 1 hour. And this is very important because it reflects where their lactate threshold should be to be able to run a sub 2 hour marathon. And for an athlete that's going to be running at this theoretical speed limit, they would have to be at their threshold for the entire time. And this next one is a little bit more specific, and it has to do with their upbringing, because they will probably be African and would have lived at high altitude for their entire life. This is really important because they essentially would have had an altitude camp for their entire life. And the thinner air that is at altitude causes an increase in red blood cells and hemoglobin, which is obviously going to make you way faster. And most importantly, Joyner predicted that this theoretical athlete would have to run a sub 27 minute 10K to be able to achieve sub 2 hour marathon or less. Here's why he thought that. As he suggests, during periods in which the 10K world record starts to drop in the history books, this is always followed a few years later by the marathon record also having a big spike in the amount of world records. And this data shows that to be the case in the early 90s, where the 10K world record was broken quite a lot. And this followed in the early 2000s with the marathon record starting to drop once again. And in 2010, the sub 27 minute 10K club was so exclusive, with only 31 athletes ever completing the distance in 27 minutes, all of which were on track. These days though, there are too many sub 27 minute runners to count. Now the 10K world record is held by Kipchoge at 26 minutes and 24 seconds. And yes, he wore super shoes. In fact, only 14 athletes have ever run sub 27 minutes on the road in a 10K, and all of them occurred during the super shoe era. Pretty interesting, right? So right now we have a small group of runners who are able to run at this marathon speed limit, right? No. I don't think so. While race times are getting faster on the road over the 10K distance, I think that Joyner's prediction values may be slightly off due to the super shoes coming out of nowhere that he just couldn't have known about. Because there must be a percentage of speed increase that these shoes give you that we just don't know yet, because we just don't have enough data to actually test this out. But there still is a place where the world records haven't been corrupted by mechanical doping. The track, except for the pace lights, but that's for another video. We need to be looking for athletes who can run a sub 27 minute 10K on the track. And this will give us a much better representation of the size of the talent pool that we have today. And this does seem to check out, as Eliud Kipchoge ran a sub 27 minute 10K many years before his sub 2 hour marathon in Vienna. So let's have a look at the current talent in the 10K distance. Well, last year in 2023, 6 athletes broke the 27 minute barrier in the 10K. Quite a small group, but still a fairly big bunch of athletes who have the raw materials necessary to run really fast marathon times in a couple of years' time. So here's my shortlist of potential candidates who could actually run this theoretical marathon. Now, this pool of athletes is getting higher year by year. And if Joyner's predictions are correct, we're gonna start to see that the 10K world record on the track is going to start to drop again, and hopefully in a couple of years time we'll start to see that the marathon record will follow suit, especially when you get these extremely talented athletes back on the road in carbon plated shoes. These guys are an elite bunch of savages, and I can't wait for them to transition into the marathon in the future. So for this list of athletes, they need to achieve the following. Yes, they have to have that sub 27 minute 10K on the road, but they also have to have the running efficiency and the biomechanics to facilitate running that fast over a marathon distance. But the third thing that they need is to be hyper responders to carbon plated shoes. Let me explain. Everyone has different shaped feet with different length, bones, and geometry. And this is really important when we're talking about running shoes, especially in the age of super shoes. And this is because the carbon plate in the super shoe has to be the right geometry to work with your body. This study from 2022 looked at carbon plates in running shoes and found that the curve of the carbon plate has to line up with your metatarsophalangeal joint, which is this joint right here. So this is probably another barrier to entry for this top speed club. Jeez. Now I think there's one more athlete that can give a good go to this theoretical speed limit, and that's Eliud Kipchoge. This man, just like Eliud, seems to have all of the raw materials necessary to not just run a sub 2 hour marathon, but take a big dent out of it and get closer to Joyner speed limit. Here's why. Last year, Kelvin tore the marathon distance apart with his performances in London and Chicago. And what's more interesting than the actual marathon world records is the style in which he's running these races. He is running aggressive negative splits, in which he runs the second half of his marathon faster than his first half. In London, for example, his second half marathon was clocked at 59 minutes and 45 seconds, which is insane. And this makes me wonder if he could tighten up those negative splits and bring his first half a little bit closer, whether he'd actually be able to break that 2 hour barrier and beyond this year. I think Kelvin has all of the raw materials necessary to break this Joyner speed limit. And luckily for him, time is on his side with this endeavor because he's only 24 years old. How insane is that? He will be running the Rotterdam Marathon in April, and I can't wait to see how he goes. And I guarantee that he's gonna take another big chunk off that world record. Now I'm gonna turn this over to you. Where do you think this theoretical speed limit is? And when do you think we'll actually get there? But if you actually wanna see what these super shoes do to an average athlete like me or yourself, then you're gonna have to watch this next video. Go on.